So
10 years.
while this is not something that we want to do, the budget before you continues to prioritize the needs of our students with an emphasis on maintaining the class sizes that we strive to keep, keeping the social and emotional support that we currently have at each school that we know is critical, high-quality curriculum materials, up-to-date technology, and we believe we can meet our contractual obligations. We're also working to maintain the nursing staff across the district to ensure all of our buildings are medically well supported. We continue to maximize the use of revolving and grant funds, as we always have. The most recent change in the funding available to us was received in late January, and this is funding for our newly arrived students. This funding, and we can look a little bit later in the packet, you have a sheet that kind of describes that funding. And we can talk about it a bit in a minute. But this funding is completely dependent upon the enrollment of these students in our schools. So I think you all know, to some degree, that this has been a very nebulous and ever-changing scenario with the students that we have that have been placed through that shelter. And so likewise, I have some confidence that this funding will indeed make its way to Auburn and that these students seemingly will be with us through the end of this school year. But I also can't guarantee that in 2 weeks, someone's not going to say they're being moved to someplace else. It's just such a very tenable situation. So we believe that they'll be with us, but that could definitely change. So for now, the changes that are reflected in this budget are the loss of 2 teaching positions. We're using the positions of 2 retirees as placeholder for the positions, with the final determination of where these cuts will be made happening later in the year, with the primary goal of being to mitigate the impact that these cuts have on our students. We're also utilizing funding from the newly arrived students to fund 1 full-time position, along with a $100,000 offset to transportation. So the results in this revised FY '25 budget reflects a 4.5% increase. The initial draft budget that you approved back in January reflected a 5.63 increase. So it is a substantial change, yet one that I believe, given this funding that we didn't receive until the end of January, will help us to offset some of that. This hasn't been an easy process for anyone. As with any organization, we're a part of the team that's the town of Auburn. And we have to do what we can to support a budget that is deemed to be fiscally responsible. Initially, the town did ask that we come in as close to 4% as we could. But as we looked at what was available to us and what that would mean for us, we felt that the lowest we could go was the 4.5% increase. So we ask for your support. We welcome your questions. There are not sweeping changes. It is quite remarkable on how a few changes can add up to quite a bit of money, you know? So, again, not anything that anyone wanted to do, but it is not an unusual situation where we typically see at this time of year that the town, once they have their budget items in order, tend to come back, not only to us, but to other departments and adjust what they're willing to accept to, as our part of the overall town budget. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or thoughts about that.
You said those 2 teachers, are 2 retiring, and we're not filling them.
So we are using those as placeholders.
Okay.
Now, so it may not be that we won't replace their specific position, because what we're going to try and do, and again, we need to look at our enrollment as it gets closer to the end of the year and what we see coming in to determine what position across the district would have the least impact on our kids. So I don't know that it'll be those positions, but that's what you'll see, that there is no funding in for them for next year. But again, it may not be those actual positions.
Any more questions or thoughts?
Through the chair, as a goal, it's maintaining class sizes, keeping what we have.
Keeping social emotional programs in
Yeah.
place.
It is, and, you know, so our funding is down because our enrollment is also down.
Right.
And so seemingly, you know, again, not optimally, because the best thing is that we can keep all these positions, right? That would be the best case scenario. And again, I can't tell you that things won't change again, but I believe that this is going to be necessary to be in line with with what the town needs. And I also believe that due to our enrollment, we can make this work in a way that's going to have a minimal impact on our kids.
I think kids have to come first, so,
Agree. Agree.
And that's why I don't want to say that just because these folks are retiring, those are the positions that we're not filling. That's exactly why I don't want to say that. I want to wait and see, because we can continue to look at where this would hit the kids. will be placed.
Okay.
All right, any more?
And we're not losing anything regarding social workers
No.
or guidance counselor, okay.
Not
All
at
right.
this time.
Okay,
And through the chair, I mean, this is, the town wants us to lower this budget. This is not our choice, but we have to, so.
Yes.
Yeah, the town's been very supportive.
Yeah.
All along, and I'm grateful for that. This was I felt a huge hit to
Yeah.
our plans. We weren't asking for the sun, moon, and stars by any means, but, any of the buffer that we had for everything is now gone. So we're down to the shoestring budget that we were dreading. But, again, if we can alleviate anything affecting the kids.
Yeah.
Then I think, and I feel like that's what you guys have done. I mean, and you've had sleepless nights over this, I know.
And I continue to do
Yes,
so.
yes.
through the chair, I just have one more question. If we take a vote and we do approve this budget, there is still a chance that we would have to lower more if you come back to us.
I mean, there's always a chance of anything.
Okay.
I think the chance is slim.
Okay.
I do think it's slim. I think Mr. Kazanovich, the town manager, has done all he can to support everything he can for us. So I don't anticipate that, but again, you just don't know, but I don't think so.
through the chair, the process here is we approve it. It does have to go to the select board and then to the towns. And I'm thinking long-term wise, I don't want to go in against what they're saying and 10 years down the line, the town not giving us what we need at that point
Yeah.
either. And also, so let's say, I know the newly arrived students is kind of a moving target. If we lose them, that's holding another one full-time employee, correct? So that is the big moving target.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Now, we did receive, and maybe this that's a good lead-in before we take a vote on the budget, to look at the next sheet in your packet. Which outlines the funding that's expected. But you'll see, so in the end of January, we received 121. So if we start at the top, when we first got our 22 students, we were given an allotment of $1,000 per student as a flat one-time payment. That's the only time that will happen. So the students we just received, we don't get an additional $1,000 for them. It was a one-time thing. So now the funding is based on $104.89 per day of enrollment. So if you look in the left, there's a 1/24/24 date. We received $121,568 for the students that we have, and that was through December 15th of 2023. That first payment was short by the payment for 4 students of $26,852. So seemingly, if these students stay with us through the end of the year, in total, we will receive $399,211. The second box starts with February 16th of '23, when we enrolled an additional 16 students. Again, there is no EL staff person, the 2 additional staff members, $100,000 in transportation. So that leaves at the bottom the $103,947 that I have not allocated at this point. And the reason I have left that out there is because if for some reason this money doesn't come through, because the last payment we don't expect to receive until August. And again, we see at the state level that their revenues are down. They're telling us we're going to get this money. I want to believe them, but would I, bet the whole farm on that? I'm not gonna do that. And so that gives us a little bit of a buffer if for some reason some of this funding doesn't materialize. So that's a wait and see.
Any more questions or comments from the committee? Are we ready to vote on this, or, yeah?
I'm
We
ready.
have no choice, so
Yeah, we don't
hopefully
really have a
everyone got a
choice.
good chance to look at it. All right, there you go.
I'll make a motion to a vote to approve the revised FY '25 draft budget presented by the superintendent.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to new business.
So I think, are there any other questions around our newly arrived students
Oh,
based on the
sorry.
information?
No.
Okay.
It should be noted, though, that the first payment that we did receive was not even the full amount.
Correct.
So that's what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
I like
Yeah.
partial empty promises, so,
And that works out to
Regard goes
$26,000.
yeah,
So that's not nothing.
right. Yeah, so- Okay.
The next item in your packet has to do with of my goals update and the process for my summative evaluation. So the first item in your packet, you'll find an update related to my goals for this year. So I'll briefly go through those. It does say at the top, superintendent's performance goals, and then we'll move on to the remaining part of this item. The first one is the student learning goal that was really focused on building a data analysis cycle, particularly related to addressing the gap between the performance of special education and general education students. We continue to have data discussions at the buildings. We have data teams at each building analyzing data. I've been working with iReady and Dibbles Data with principals to look at progress, and they're using that to set their intervention groups up. Classroom visits are ongoing. Universal Design for Coaches have been actively working in their own classrooms, and at a couple of our school buildings, they've opened their classrooms to other staff who want to come in and observe the UDL lessons, and principals are making arrangements for them to do that, so that's very exciting. Principals were asked to find a data set that they found interesting based on what they know of their children, and to analyze that through a lens of equity. So whether that be our special education students performing at the same level, our students of color included in AP classes, as much as that, as that reflects the population of the school. We had a wonderful discussion at our principals meeting today. It was meant to be not a all-encompassing assignment, but to begin to build our muscles around looking for areas of inequity when it comes to student performance. And it was a great discussion. I think we all learned a lot from one another. So that will continue, and then along with that, with this data information, I'm going to take some next steps with what they might do to support what their findings were. So that's great. And we're currently looking at establishing, and actually, I think some of it started for after-school programming for students who need support, and that's come out of some of those analyses. The second goal is a professional practice goal related to my participation in NISIP, which is the new superintendent induction program. I continue to attend the meetings and have now begun to share some of the information that they share with us. So recently, I shared with principals an article on feedback that works. We all need to give feedback. We also need to know how to get feedback, and that was something that we discussed at a principal meetings. And we also revisited UDL Look-Fors, which is something that's come out of our training that we've gone through, so that we revisited what they should be looking for as they enter classrooms, so that we know that UDL is starting to take shape. The next district improvement goal had to do with making sure that some of our leadership time was talking about deepening our knowledge of unconscious bias, racial identity, racism, and how they might contribute to inequitable situations in our school buildings. Again, here I also listed that analysis of those small data sets for those types of inequities, which I think is going to be a very powerful tool for us. Mr. Keller also found an excellent gentleman. His name is Colin Rolls from Perennial Education. He's providing us with some training around building coherence between our strategic plan and our beliefs in equity, and how we can marry that with the data to make sure that the steps that we're taking are all pushing us in the same direction, and we're not kind of firing on all cylinders and kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? We want this to be a coherent process. And that has been some terrific professional development for myself and for the other folks on the leadership team. Ms. Rocco and I continue to work on that onboarding process. We're in the process of our personnel records, so that goes on. And finally, the last district improvement goal is around regular updates on the strategic plan. So I did share my first update. I got some decent feedback about it, that people were happy to see that, so I hope to continue that once a month. Just kind of letting people know what we're working on related to that. And we'll see what folks say. I'll ask at the end of the year. And then finally, this continues to kind of be, I will tell you, not one of my main priorities around a facilities committee, given the influx of kids, our lower enrollment, and how that's all played out. But we are going to at least do a walkthrough of our buildings with a group of folks that I'm going to be organizing. I know, Ms. McCrillis, you were going to be on there. This was from some time ago, just to take a look and make sure that our kids' needs are being met that way. So I welcome any questions, if anyone has any.
Any questions?
Okay, all right, thank you. So the next step with this is the time of year for you to complete my evaluation. So I know that last year, when you completed this, there was some feedback that there were things that some of the members said that you just didn't have information about and didn't quite know if I did it or didn't do it as part of my job. And so the first item in your packet is my examples of evidence for the 23-24 evaluation. So what I tried to do here is to give a sampling of the things that I do in each of the areas for which you'll be evaluating me throughout the rubric. And again, this is just a sampling. This is not a comprehensive list of everything I do. And some of these are linked, so I think, did you get the packet electronically too? Yeah, so the link should be live in there related to the strategic plan, the district report card, some of those things. So again, this is just for your reference as you work through completing the evaluation over the next few weeks. And I will not go through all of this, but I thought it was useful because it does make sense that there would be things that we may not necessarily discuss here at a meeting, but that you might want to know that I do during the course of a day. So likewise, the next item is the actual rubric itself. So this is the rubric from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that outlines what it means to be unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, or exemplary in each of the areas of the rubric that you'll be evaluating me on. So thought that that was a good resource for you to have. And then finally is the actual summative evaluation report that you complete. And so I'm going to read what I had here. So you'll find the pertinent pages of the evaluation form along with the rubric. Each school committee member will be asked to respond to each of the indicators noted under each of the performance standards to the best of their ability as exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory. If a member does not have knowledge of an indicator, it's okay to leave it blank. You may also provide comments related to each of the selections for the overall standards, but you are not required to. At our next school committee meeting on March 13th, you'll have the opportunity to ask me any questions you may have or gather additional information. So that will give you some time to look through some of the examples of evidence that I provided to you. Once we do that, the form then will be completed and sent to School Committee Chair Jessie Harrington by Wednesday, March 20th. She will take these evaluation report forms, she'll compile the results, which will be shared at the March 27th, 2024 school committee meeting. These results will be shared as my evaluation and then will be used to set my goals for the 2024-2025 school year to be shared with the committee at a later date. So I really was planning to put this off a little bit, and then I realized time was running short, actually. The year's going to be over, so thought in speaking with Mrs. Harrington that this would be a good time to get this process going. So it does give a little bit of time. So between now and the next meeting, there's time to look through the information, and then we can ask questions at the next one, and then the evaluation will take place after that.
And Steph, I know this is all new to you and probably very overwhelming. There's a lot of information here, so if you have any questions or anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Meg and I have been through this 100 times.
Yeah.
Megan gave me the heads up.
Okay, all right, good. And I live daily with her, and I see her in the trenches, and I have to say, like, she's a busy woman. Yeah, you're busting your butt, and thank you very much for all you do, so. And
you all for the
Alan, you
support.
as well, and Cecilia as well. And Mandy, you're the best. You have a good team.
Through the chair, so this is end of cycle, so your aim is that you have met all these goals? I feel like UDL is like ongoing.
UDL is on, yeah, so I think I have made I think I've met the goals this year. Related to that, I think other than the one around the facilities piece, but that kind of, it fell off a little bit when our enrollment went down and all of that, so it became less of a priority, even though I do think it's still a priority that we have a good updated kind of evaluation of our building resources and what we have based on the enrollment we have now. So I think it's important to follow through with, but I will tell you that it did take kind of a backseat to some of the other things related to instruction.
But through the chair, you hired another facility assistant or something for another building, right? You had, what's his name, Mr. Fahey?
Yeah.
And you went through and did all the stuff for the high school track and made sure that they were meeting all of like the custodial needs. Like you've talked about that throughout. Like it's been very small. Like it hasn't been like the front runner, but you've 100%.
Oh, yeah, no, and I
through
meet with Mr. Fahey.
like 100%, like I know he's come in and he's just like, and we're working on this and we're working
Yes,
on this.
yes, exactly.
and
exactly.
windows and, like,
Yes, yes.
it
And
just-
I meet with him regularly, and of course, he runs the show related to all those things, because Joe knows all about our
Right.
buildings. But no, a lot has been happening, for sure, right? This is just taking a little bit of a different lens related to when you see kids sitting in classrooms, and do they have what they need related to that kind of space, right?
Right.
He's more through that maintenance lens, so a little
Okay.
bit different,
A
but
little bit
yes.
different, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And coming off of COVID, we had talked about creating like a committee of different stakeholders in the community to come together and all work on this, and that's kind of what's taken the back seat.
Oh, okay.
But there's still work in progress.
Like I feel like you've like the little crumbs that we get of like we're doing this and then we have this and then power line something with UDL and making sure they have connectivity, like it's
Yeah.
like little pieces.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
It's just not the
We
star.
just don't have the group of people going
Yes.
school to school.
Exactly.
Yeah. We will. We're working on
Eventually,
it.
yes.
We're working on it.
Yeah. So, all right. Any more questions or comments regarding the evaluation? Okay, and if anyone has questions or along the way, you have my cell, and Beth is always here to answer questions as well, so.
And you're also welcome to reach out in between if there's something. I'm happy to meet.
Okay, great. All right, we'll move on.
The next two items somewhat go together. There's an item for EL tiered focus monitoring and special education tiered focus monitoring. Lucky us, we are the double winner of this process this year. This is a regular process. So for the EL tiered focus monitoring, the Office of Language Acquisition conducts a review of programs through this tiered focus monitoring. They do it every several years. We have to begin the self-assessment actually anytime. We have all the information downloaded with what we need to gather, which we have to upload information on certain students, obviously anonymously, and then a lot of reporting kind of things on, did we fill out certain forms and our letters set in a timely way. Likewise, special education will go through that as well. The EL has to be finished by May 31st. The special ed tiered focus monitoring, they're using an entirely new platform to report all this, and the platform's not completely built yet. So I don't know how that's going to play out with finishing this year, because it's not, we can't even start it yet. So, but two big projects for folks in this office that will be undertaken now. And then typically in the fall, they have, they'll come for either virtual or in-person visits. So more to come.
Okay. Boy. All righty.
Ball of wax. I included in here, which I had done some at the beginning of the year, I just took the list of events from our district calendar, only to highlight for anyone who may be watching, that the schools are doing a great job with maintaining the events on here, so if you're ever wondering what's going on and when it's going on, for the most part, it will be found here. So I just thought it was another good time, kind of mid-year, to remind everyone that that resource is available on our website.
Yeah, there's a lot
I
of
love
good
that.
stuff going on.
A lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, good to know. All right, we'll move on to teaching and learning report.
Yeah, I have just a couple things to report on tonight that didn't make it into the agenda. We are in the process of, or actually I submitted 2 grants. We're waiting for information on those pieces. So one of the grants is, as you are aware, we have new physical education and health standards that were released. And so the state released a grant application to districts to receive professional development on that piece. And so we've submitted that. There's also another grant that we submitted on social studies curriculum. So the state has this worked with Primary Source, which is a professional development provider, to write curriculum called Investigating History that's received really positive feedback from districts that have piloted it this past year. And so they're opening it up to grades 4, 5, 6, and 7. And so we submitted a grant application for that. Which will also include professional development and the opportunity to get those resources. So we're waiting to hear feedback on that. So I will update the committee.
Yeah, those would be 2
when we
great
hear that.
things if we get that, so, yeah.
Through the chair, I use Investigating History, and it is a wonderful curriculum. So highly recommend. It's hopefully Auburn gets that grant because I've been piloting it this year.
Oh, good.
And it has a much higher rigor and much higher expectations, and it just takes a lot of the, what you need to teach versus what you like to teach out of the history curriculum, because I could spend like months on Egypt, and because I like teaching that, but you don't need to spend months on Egypt. So it's a wonderful curriculum.
We had applied for a couple years ago, I think when I first became assistant superintendent at 5th grade, and we didn't get it. It was very, very competitive. I think we may have a better chance. It went to a lot of the cities and that kind of thing first, so hopefully, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's much more rigorous and, a lot more, I really like how the program works. Like they give you a PowerPoint, a slide deck, and then then there's videos and there's interactive and there's lecture, and then it just mixes it up so much, so.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. We'll move on to Cecilia's business and financial report.
All right, good evening, everyone. In your packet, I have a listing of the school department warrant articles that I have on. to present to you. The Board of Selectmen voted on February 12th to open the warrant for May 7th, annual town meeting, and to close the warrant on March 4th. So I provided these warrant articles for you to review and approve, and they'll be sent over to the town on or before March 4th. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. The articles are pretty much the typical standard articles that we present. The first one being the Medicaid article. We did go up from 140, a request of 140 to 150 this year, because the last couple of years' receipts have shown that we've steadily been increasing, but we're doing it conservatively. We're not kind of being too aggressive, so we felt like 150 was a doable amount. And the rest of the amounts, the Gym Trust and the McKinney-Vento Homeless and the Foster Care Transportation all have blank amounts. The trust fund, we usually get that from the town later on in the, in a few months later. And we also wait for the McKinney-Vento and the Foster Care receipts, what we'll get back from the state, from DOE. They're directly related to what we report on the end of the year report. And we get a percentage back on what we've actually expensed for the year, for the previous year, for FY23. So, but as soon as I get those, I'll fill those in. Basically, sometimes we don't hear until after June, and then we'll probably put that article off till the fall, but it's important for us to get it on there. Just the fact that, so if the money comes in, we get the money, so. Okay.
All right.
Any questions, or?
No. Important to get on the agenda, though.
Yeah, nothing unusual.
Yes.
No.
All right, thank you.
Speaking of that, just
Oh,
roughly.
we need to vote
just,
on that.
We did.
Mr. Fahey, Mr. Fahey and I did meet, because sometimes on the warrant article for the annual town meeting, we will present repurposing CIP funds, but we went through our CIP and discussed that with Dr. Chamberlain as well, and we didn't feel any need to move any funds or to ask to repurpose that, so everything's on target the way we planned, so
Great.
we're in good shape that way.
Great.
All right, great.
Good news.
Okay.
So I need a vote, I guess. to
Yep.
approve.
Seek a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the school department warrant articles for May 7th, 2024 annual town meeting as presented by the business manager.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I've also put in your packet a year-to-date budget report dated February 16th, as well as budget transfers dated February 16th between the same series for your information and between different series for which I'm seeking your approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have with regard to the year-to-date budget report or the actual transfers.
Any questions?
No.
Seeing none, I'll seek a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the list of transfers dated February 16th, 2024, as presented by the business manager.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I thank you all very much for
All
your
right,
support.
thank you for your report.
Through the chair, I'm just going to reiterate that I'm really going to miss her.
Yeah.
I'm really going to miss you. I'm really gonna miss you.
She is a good one, that is for sure. All right, and we do need executive session.
A brief one, yes, yes.
Okay, let's seek a motion to go into executive session.
Make a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss the bargaining position with personnel that could be compromised if discussed in open session. We will not return to open session.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Steph?
Aye.
Meg?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Sam?
Yep.
And myself, yes. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.